Hey, welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking with Drew Neisser. Drew, it is great to connect with you. Quick review on you or bio on you. Uniquely wired as both a strategist and writer, you help dozens of CMOs unleash their inner renegade and told the stories of over 450 marketers via the #2 podcast for CMOs called Renegade Thinkers Unite, a live streaming show on LinkedIn called Renegade Renegade Thinkers Live. Love that. Your CMO Spotlight column for Ad Age, and we're talking about your book, A Renegade's Guide to Marketing, and your second book, Renegade Marketing, 12 Steps to Building Unbeatable B2B Brands, which launched in October. And we'll also talk about your business of the CMO huddles. So let's chat a little bit about marketing. I always love talking about marketing. I think it is one of the most important things that all companies need to be thinking about and doing. And more important today, as a business coach, I think it is so critical that people understand their messaging, their marketing, their brand, really what marketing means in this post-COVID world where the e-commerce world, because of COVID, really accelerated at a very, very fast clip. So let's just kind of start off by breaking down some fundamentals. Define marketing.
Yeah, it's, anything that you do that puts your brand in front of people. I mean, it really is at this point in time. Marketing is pretty a vast arena.
Yeah. And when you put it in front of people, let's talk about what it needs to activate within people, right? And break it down, how much time do you have, right? So people have an attention span less than a goldfish today. So how much time when it's in front of people? Talk about that kind of continuum of.
So, here's the thing. I think you could get carried away with that. And I think you really need to divide this up into a process. And that's why I wrote this book, because marketing become, particularly B2B, gotten ridiculously complicated and
Yeah.
people were worried about a zillion different things. And so I wanted to simplify marketing and make sure that it could be simplified. So actually created the 12 steps, talked to a bunch of CMOs about it. We did research on it, then we put it into practice. It's about a 4-year enterprise to really make sure that this theory was actually worked. And the key sort of here, and it's really built, is this CATS framework, which is courageous, artful, thoughtful, and scientific. And the thing is, great marketing takes courage. And we saw that. It's funny. Here we are talking live, and last night was the Super Bowl, and there were a number of B2B brands on there, and you'll remember a few and you won't remember most.
Yeah.
But that's a big, big, courageous play. And I'm not saying every brand needs to be on the Super Bowl, and
Right.
there's a lot to it, but courage, we got to start there. And,
Yeah.
if you said to me, well, what are you talking about, Drew? I'm going to say, look, first of all, you can think about brand as a very simple thought,
Yeah.
one basic idea, and then you're going to bring it to life a million different ways. And in order to get there, in the first chapter of my book, is called Clear Away the Clutter. It's like you need to really take some deep breaths and say, I'm going to focus on marketing. I'm going to focus on the brand, and we're going to focus on just a few things.
Yeah.
And this is the first part of what I talk about in the book, and where I think everything goes wrong from there.
Yeah.
You can't go to channel right away. We can't talk about length. We can't talk about that. You've got to focus on having a very clear and dare to be distinct. That's where we got to start.
Yeah. I love what you're talking about. I interviewed the other day a feng shui specialist, and it reminded me of a book that I read 20 years ago by Karen Kingston called Clear Your Clutter. And it was a book about how to just just basically feng shui and clear your clutter. And it was great. I mean, I read it on an airplane, read it on an airplane on the flight home, came home, had a list, and my wife and I for 18 hours just were like cleaning and clearing and throwing away. But it's right. So until you clear the clutter and get rid of the distractions, I agree with you completely. I think that is really critical. And I think sometimes people don't realize that clutter is clutter. So let's just kind of define that, because I think that's kind of they're used to certain patterns. They're used to the chaos, the tumult that's in kind of their way. How do you clear the clutter to even get started?
Well, it's funny. In my book, I actually have a pledge that the quick clear away the clutter pledge, and one of the things that for all leaders to be thinking about is only do the things that only you can do.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple thing, and that's the fifth of the five. I actually have to grab the book over there to read all five. But the point of this is you have to commit to it, and it
Yeah.
has to be part of it. And I like to think of it as sort of today's Marie Kondo of marketing: is can
Yeah.
we do that? And every time you add something to your list, you got to take something off. It's a simple idea, but that's one of the ways to do it, because if you're a list maker, and by the way, I've stopped making lists. I have things on my calendar. If they're not on my calendar, they're not going to happen.
Amen. That's how I live. I teach a lot of time management, and what I teach is your calendar should be it. I mean, if you have sticky notes and notebooks, and I mean, it's you can't do it. You can't do it.
No.
So I love it. I love the way your book is set up into 4 parts. So let's kind of dive into it a little bit, okay? Because initially you're talking about courage, and I love it, and it's the courageous strategy as you put it in your book. But part 2, as you do that, is you're talking about clearing your clutter and dare to be distinct, and then pounce on your purpose. But then you're moving into artful ideation, which is kind of welcoming the we, perfect, pithy, delight by design. When you say welcome we, what does that mean? Because I interviewed, I'll tell you in a minute, but what does that mean to you?
So it's really this notion that everybody in an organization feels like they own marketing, and we want them to feel like they own marketing, because employees are the front line, no matter what. And I don't care whether you have 5 employees or you have 5 million employees. I mean, they are the front line, and if they don't believe and they don't participate in the process. And so the first thing that I recommend to any new CMO, anybody who's added marketing or a business owner, is do an employee survey and benchmark where you are. Chances are they know the brand better than you do. They know whether or not the values that you talk about, you live by. And so welcoming we is just the recognition. And I tell a story in the book about a CMO who thought they had the idea day one. I got it. I know what it is. I got it. And the problem was, and the realization was, that was useless. Just having the idea was useless, because there was no consensus building. There was no foundational work done to get to a sort of a conclusion that you could go to market with. And so this is, again, why we have to welcome we just have to accept that marketing is a team sport.
Well, it's you're making me think of Sam Walton. The story goes that he would, be in the boardroom, get the data, realize that no one in the boardroom actually were their clients, go to the diner and have pie and coffee with the people at the diner, and then go back to the boardroom and filter out anything that didn't matter to the people in the diner. So, there's a lot of really good insight and wisdom in that. I just want to mention this because your chapter is called Welcome We. I just interviewed another author who wrote a book called Generation We, by Anne Marie Hayek. And it's all about the Generation Z and how you market to them. Anyway, I just thought it was kind of fascinating. It made me think of it. And so now thoughtful, right? So I think one of the key differentiators in all businesses are those that can execute and those that cannot execute, to the effectiveness that is really within the highest potential of themselves, the team, and the company. And so your part 3 is really moving into thoughtful execution. So talk a little, you mentioned it a little bit just now, but talk about it a little bit more when it comes to the customers, the service, the employees, et cetera.
Right. So one of the things that makes this book Renegade, if you will, is that we flip the model. Most businesses think about marketing as an acquisition first, and then a retention thing, and employees are an afterthought. And this is particularly true in the last 2 or 3 years, where we just noticed over and over again, CMO would have a great new campaign. They were really excited about it. They would go to market, and then I'd say, so how long did you get your employees involved in this beforehand? They'll say, oh, we ran out of time. We had a week or 2 days. And in the book, I talk about this a lot. One company I know spent a year getting the employees ready. And this is the difference between
Yeah.
marketing that is transformative and marketing that is just a coat of paint on an old barn. If
Right.
it's a real thing and you've transformed the company, then you need to train employees on it. And a lot of companies will do that. Great inspired CMOs will say, we're going to certify you on this new message. And
Yeah.
we're going to change organizationally because you're making a promise when you go to market with a new brand.
Yeah.
And who delivers on the promise? Employees. So we flip it on its end and we say employees first, and then we talk about customers and cultivating customer champions. Because again, if you go to market with a story that your customers don't believe, it's not going to succeed.
Yeah.
Flat out. And then lastly, then we can talk about prospects. And when I talk about marketing prospects, I talk about doing something of value. We call it selling through service, creating something. This is a whole world of content marketing, but there's lots of ways of doing it. The old way of just thinking about marketing as advertising and doing a billboard
Right.
is really just that. It's antiquated.
Yeah. I love it. All right. So now let's move into the fourth part of the book. I want to give the listeners a full, view of the book, because I think to every business, there's the art and the science. And in marketing, it inherently comes with the art side of the business, the creative and, things of that nature. But you got to marry it with the science.
Sure.
And so I love your fourth section when you talk about the scientific method, because that to me then marries the art and the science of what we're talking about. So kind of walk the potential reader through that.
Sure. So let's go back and say, let's say you're a courageous marketer and you have a wonderfully distinct positioning. You've got your purpose. Then you bring the company along in your artful ideation, and then you execute thoughtfully, right? You've done all the things that get employees, customers, and prospects. All of that will fail. And this is particularly true for B2B CMOs if you don't have measurement in place, if you don't know what success looks like. Now, the thing that I try to do is get people to think about marketing as something where we're going to measure employees, we're going to measure customers, and we're going to measure prospects. And when you think about marketing metrics in that way, and then you can add the fourth bucket, which will be brand health, right? Something that speaks to that. Then you have a chance of creating a very simple dashboard that said, we're going to have 2 metrics for employees. We're going to have 2 metrics for customers, and a metric, for example, employee, great metric, pride. How proud are they to work for your company? Mm-hmm. Measure that. You can do it every quarter. You can do it every year, but do that. And most companies don't do it. But if you measure pride as your core thing, that's amazing, because they'll be proud of the marketing or not.
Yeah.
And so that's part one of this thing, measuring customers. Everybody uses NPS. I'm not a huge fan of that, but if that's all you got, fine. There's lots of other ways. What I really like is, how many referrals do you get a year?
Yeah.
How many referrals did you get that week? There's a metric that shows really true customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
And then in this world today, almost everybody, I don't care how small a business, has some form of marketing technology. They're using HubSpot for inbound or something, right? The problem is, in the last 3-4 years, is the investment has gotten out of control, and some brands are spending 20% of their budget on marketing technology, and that's not marketing, that's technology. And for every dollar you put into marketing technology, you need $1 in staff, maybe $2 in staff. And so the challenge is, at some point in time, you end up with no marketing budget because all your staff is going to the technology.
Right.
So we talk about automating attentively, and then we get back to the fun part, which is, and this is the last chapter in the book, which is test to triumph. And even a small business can take 10% to 20% of their budget and test something new every quarter. You got your main program, it's working, it's getting your customers happy, it's keeping them enthusiastic, it's getting your prospects in. Now let's spend 20% on tests, and that's fun. That brings it back to what makes marketing pretty exciting, is when you build a team that is is constantly experimenting.
Yeah, I love everything that you talked about. It was kind of like a macro master's class in marketing. And I love particularly what you talk about when it's how many referrals are you getting, and quantify that, because I think sometimes so many people get stuck in the wrong metrics and looking at the wrong things. I don't track any stats. I don't track my podcast downloads, my likes, my this, because the only thing I care about are the ambassadors that refer me business. So
Right.
I know I get a ton. My business is growing through referrals. I get a ton of referrals from people who are ambassadors of my content, my clients, etc. And that to me is where people get it wrong. It's not so much just being an influencer today, but who can you empower to be an ambassador of your product today?
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, and it's funny, having started CMO Huddles in April of 2020, I'm running a business that's a lot more like, agency business is exactly what you're describing. It's a
yeah.
services business, but Huddle, CMO Huddles is a community, and a community right now, we're like a few shy of 100 CMOs. We started with 18 in October of 2020.
Wow.
And we are tracking more metrics than ever did in any other business. We do track referrals, which is great, and watching that number, but we've
Yeah.
got a pipeline. We've created a pipeline for the business, and we know what the acquisition model is. And
Yeah.
so while we invest more in customer satisfaction than we do in actually inbound, we still are model, and the math is helpful. It's
Oh,
helpful
yeah,
to
yeah,
have,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
helpful to have a dashboard. I
Yeah. No,
really
I
encourage,
agree. No,
and
I agree. No, no,
this,
no. I agree with
yeah,
everything you're saying. I'm all for dashboards.
yeah.
I'm not, I don't get caught up in how many people like something, you know?
No, no, no,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah.
that's
That's
yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
talking about. But no,
Yeah, well,
dashboards are critical. Yeah.
and by the way, leads are one of those kind of bad numbers too for a lot of B2B marketers, because leads
Yeah.
are not today, it's all about opportunities. And then even then, it's how long, what kind of customer you're acquiring. Are you acquiring the right customer?
Yeah.
Which is so important, because you won't get to the accelerated referral process that you talked about as your business driver without bringing the right customers in, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I love
So
it.
you really have to be picky about that.
Give me, Drew, I love talking about your book. You talked a little bit about CMO huddles. Give the listeners a less than 1 minute, story on how you got to kind of where you are today. Because I believe that, there's no success is not a straight line. And so it has its ups and downs, but give us the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, I would say that almost everything in my life has started with a crisis. You could take 2008 when I bought Renegade from the parent company we had founded the company with, and walked right into the worst recession since 1929. And one of our clients stiffed us $500,000, and 70% of our business was walking out the door. So we had a bit of a crisis moment there.
Yeah.
And the answer was at that moment to pivot and focus. And so one of the things we started focusing on was content. And in order to do content, I started interviewing CMOs. Well, lo and behold, I've now interviewed over 500 CMOs. The last 250 have been business to business CMOs. And that, without me knowing it, would end up creating this opportunity for CMO huddles. And so, I would say it's just these crises moments.
Yeah.
And that's the way CMO huddles came out of that. Is I had no idea what would happen as a result of COVID, but I did know I had a lot of friends out there and I could help them. And if I help them, maybe something good would happen.
I love it. I love it. All right. Quick speed round. You ready?
Yep.
Finish this sentence. The word renegade to me means.
The first word I think about is what the Japanese thought of outlaw, but it's not. Renegade is just thinking differently.
All right. Somebody who is stuck right now. I'm a business coach. I work with successful people who are stuck. I always like to give tools to get people unstuck. One thing that somebody who is not, thinking about marketing correctly and is just stuck, one thing they can do to kind of raise their awareness.
One thing they can do to raise their awareness
and clear the clutter.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this notion of read the chapter, dare to be distinct. If any of your viewers want that chapter, I'm happy to send it to them, because that's where it starts. You have to be distinctive and you have to dare, and that is the core strategy you're going to build from.
Yeah, I love it. You mentioned in the beginning, you're big. You're all about marketing. You mentioned in the beginning the Super Bowl was yesterday, it was a great game. I love seeing Stafford win as a Detroiter, and so that was great. What was your favorite commercial and why?
Oh, easily the Amazon Alexa.
The best.
Yeah,
It was the best
it
one.
was
Yeah.
so charming and
Yeah.
entertaining and surprising and witty, and yeah. But
Yeah.
there were 6
Yeah.
B2B brands on there, and I wrote about them on the blog on renegade.com. And one of the things I wrote in the blog, which was fascinating, was that if you are a first-time advertiser, you're not prepared for the website traffic. Sure
Yeah.
enough, Coinbase website crashed yesterday.
Oh, that was interesting. Yeah, they had a kind of a cool, with the QR code and
By
yeah.
the way, they moved from 186 rank app to number 2 in an hour.
Oh, I bet. Yeah,
I
that
mean,
was a cool ad. That was a
yeah.
cool ad. Yeah, so the Alexa one was great. I liked the Larry David one.
Oh my God, yeah,
Yeah,
hilarious.
that one was hilarious. I loved the Toyota one. That was just, beautiful.
Yep.
And then the Pringle one to me was kind of funny because
It's really goofy. I mean,
really
there's
funny,
a guy in the casket with a Pringles thing on
right,
his
because that
arm.
always is the most frustrating. I love Pringles, but it is the most frustrating part. But I thought the commercials overall were pretty great. Yeah, they were some good ones. Yeah. Drew, tell everybody where they can buy the book, learn about you, connect with
Sure.
you, the huddles, everything.
Sure. So the book's on Amazon, every channel, hardcovers, paperback, audio, ebook, whatever. Renegade.com. You can find all the good stuff there. CMO Huddles is cmohuddles.com.
It's great. Drew, I appreciate you being on the show. Think Community, thanks so much. I talk a lot about in my blogs, my podcasts, videos, the importance of marketing. It is so critical. Marketing, branding, especially in today's world where everything is happening so fast. You've got to be able to, I will echo what you said, Drew, clear the clutter to get very, very focused. The consumer needs it. And it's really, really important. Drew, I appreciate taking your time. Think Community. If Drew can help you, check it out. His book is a great one. Drew, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you.